Hi everybody, I'm Kerry Cunningham. I'm a former Serious Decisions and Forrester analyst. I currently head up research and thought leadership at Sixth Sense, and I'm your host for the Science of B2B podcast, which is the one you're listening to or watching or both right now. Today's episode is entitled Like I Need a Hole in the Head, and you'll know why in just a minute. Now, before we start, I want to thank you for tuning in again if you've seen earlier episodes of the podcast. If not, welcome. Thanks for joining. Really do appreciate it. And please do have a look or listen to earlier episodes, especially the first one, which explains a bit about what we're up to here at the Science of B2B. So let's get right into it. Last week, I mentioned that I wouldn't be dispensing tips and tricks and action items you can put into use all the time. I'll do it sometimes, but when we get into the habit of thinking only that way, of continuous incremental improvement, we can lose sight of whether we should be doing a thing at all. We're going to see how that played out in situations, both familiar and not, today. So from the beginning of time, it seems, humans and our almost human cousins have sought out medical treatments for what ails us. The very clever paleoanthropologists who do the science on this stuff have discovered evidence from the plaque on 50,000-year-old Neanderthal teeth that indicates that they chewed poplar bark. Now, poplar bark has no nutritional value and it tastes really bad. So why would they do that? One of the active ingredients in aspirin is found in poplar bark. Now, the individual that they took this tooth from also suffered from an abscess tooth. And we know that more recent ancient human cultures going back 3,000 to 4,000 years have used the same tree for the same purpose. But the history of medicine is also ripe with a lot of nonsense, and much of it quite dangerous. Two of my favorite nonsensical treatments are bloodletting and trepanning or trepanation. Now, both would have seemed like common sense until very recently. Now, we know that bloodletting isn't really a cure for anything, but our forebears seem to think that it was. And when you don't know how the body works at all, it could sort of make sense that a little less of the red hot stuff flowing through your veins might really help sometimes, especially if you're experiencing inflammation, fevers, those kinds of things. But my all-time favorite treatment is called trepanation. Trepanation is the procedure in which they drill a hole in your skull. Trepanation was done all over the world, across centuries, millennia even. And while we might think, wow, that's nuts, if you don't know how the body works, again, you pretty much have only an intuition. You would hope that, seeing that it never actually cured anyone of anything and probably killed a bunch of people, that might have been a valuable observation. But that's not what happened. Instead, people just kept working at getting better at it. And as late as 1796, new techniques were extolled in a medical textbook put out by the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh and Ireland. That book went to at least a 5th edition. So I mean, they really thought they were perfecting the craft. Around the time that trepanning book was written, approximately 60% of child deaths in the city of London could be attributed to infections. That changed suddenly, in historical terms, with the discovery of germs. When we figured out that germs were causing disease, we cleaned things better, we cleaned ourselves. We discovered that alcohol and other chemicals could kill the germs and prevent or stop diseases. Children and older folks stopped dying of cuts on the leg or hangnails or tooth decay. So why am I telling you this? We are no longer clueless about how B2B buying really works. We know it's a group or committee process. We know it's not an individual person. And before I get trolled, if your buyer is an individual person and that's all there is to it, then this episode is not really talking to you, but do feel free to hang out for the refreshments and the snacks after. It's totally cool. Yet everyone has systems and processes that are predicated on the idea that a lead, one person on your website or at your event, really means something in and of itself. And it doesn't. Not really. Bit of history here. How do we get in this spot? When I started in B2B back in the dark ages, and for the first 10 years of my career or so, there were accounts. Accounts could themselves be a lead, but leads as a term was not really applied to people. The primary reason for that is that we rarely, if ever, saw people who were demonstrating interest until we phoned them up ourselves or knocked on their door. But once digital marketing came to be, it started to get confusing because the thing we started seeing and interacting with was a person, not an account. That person was someone who had actually become a lead. And as more and more leads were created, I would argue that we in B2B started to focus on how to identify which one of those leads were really buyers and which ones weren't. That bit, of course, makes sense. But the problem is the method that was chosen did not. part of it makes sense. So you want to filter on some characteristics. Is it the right account? Does the person have the right title? Does it have the right persona? So we're okay here. But the problem is we haven't filtered out much yet. So then everyone went to how much content did the person consume? And that's where things went off the rails. I have never seen any evidence, and I have been looking for a long time, that how much content a person consumes is at all related to what their company is in market to buy. Think about the way that you behave. We go to websites and consume content for many different reasons, making content consumption itself a very poor signal. Now, on the screen now are most of the telling numbers that you should all pay attention to. This data was compiled by Clary, the software company. Clary's system collects interactions and contact names from marketing, sales, and communication systems like email and calendars. So for its customers, Clary has a pretty complete view of who was in some way involved in a buying process. Their numbers tell the story. For deals under $50K annually, it's an average of 7. 51 to 250K, it's 10. And for over 250K, it's 19. The important point here, this is saying for large deals, 19 people are involved in consuming content, going to meetings, being on emails. They can leave digital tracks, and we can use those tracks to know who's really in market and not. And stay tuned, we're going to be doing a lot of the validating of these numbers ourselves here at 6 Cents, so we're digging into that already. We also know from my former colleagues at Forrester that a typical individual involved in a buying process has something like 4 or 5 interactions with each vendor they're looking at. If you take a conservative 4 times 19 members of a buying group, you see that you have somewhere in the 70 to 90 range of signals from a buying group. Personally, I think it's probably a lot more than that, but again, we're going to find out. So we have so many signals to see and help us evaluate which prospects are really in market and which are not. But right now, most of you are happily looking at just one signal, the MQL. And you're working hard at being better MQL diviners, better trepanners, elaborating on where and how big that hole in your own skull goes. So stop doing that. We know better now. We need systems and processes that see all of those signals, that bring all of those signals and processes together to create one coherent, comprehensive signal. We need to see intent. We need to see the traffic on our websites. We need to see where it's coming from, and we need to see our leads. Each of those is just one form of a buying signal that gets merged with all of the rest to form that one complete picture of a buying group and its intentions. I do have an action item. This week, my plea is to start doing something about this. And so I'll leave you with some homework. Understand your buying groups. How many people are involved in buying the stuff that you sell? Is it 10? Is it 19? What does sales think? What do your customers say? Have you ever asked your customers how many people were involved in that purchase process? And if you do, here's a tip. Ask the senior folks that you probably already know, but go ask the influencers. Go ask manager level people. Were they involved in the process? How many other people were involved? What you'll find, what we found back at Forrester, is that if you're a VP, you think of a small number of people being involved. You think of the people who report directly to you or maybe your peers. If you're an influencer who's a little bit involved in the process, you have a very clear understanding of all of the other people who are influencing whether or not you get that solution that you want. All right, so next week, I'll take a deeper dive into the logic and the math of all of these signals, and you'll get a bit more of the things to do next on this topic. So thank you all for joining me today. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.